I'm Stephen McGee, and this is a Hillman imp, like me, manufactured in Scotland in the mid-70s. But while this is a rare model, I'm one of 1,300,000. That's the number of people who've come onto the electoral roll in Scotland over the last 18 years. A whole new generation of young Scots able to vote for or against devolution. But haven't our parents been here before us? In the late 70s, wasn't Scotland convinced that it would be ruled by a parliament from Calton Hill? And didn't that campaign go horribly wrong, leaving Scotland confused and divided? The ghost of 79 has haunted the dinner parties of Scotland's chattering and political classes ever since. This is the building that was converted at some expense to house the parliament that never happened. In our democracy, a simple majority of one is normally enough to secure victory in an election or in a parliamentary vote. But that didn't happen in 79.
The A to Z of Devo speak. The letter A. A is for Ancram, as in Michael, the once pro-devolution Tory who saw the light and became a government minister. B is for Brian, as in Wilson, the once anti-devolution Labourite who saw the light and became a government minister.
And U is for U-turn. Confused? So am I. But then I've got an excuse. This is me in 79 at my 5th birthday party. I was more concerned with learning my ABC than with learning about devolution.
What do you know about devolution?
Nothing really.
Do you not want to be a politician?
No.
What would you like to be instead?
A nurse.
Would you like to be in the assembly when you grow up?
No.
Why not?
I don't know.
Would you like to be an assemblyman when you grow up?
No.
Why not?
Don't really know.
The A to Z of Devo speak.
The letter V. V is for voters. New ones come along all the time.
The generation that was my age in the late 70s are now wrinklies in their 40s. And while they run the government, the opposition, the newspapers and television, they forget that we don't know what they take for granted.
People like you find it easy, aching to see, walking on it.
This programme is for my generation. From now on, all modern music is banned. We're going back to a time when our fathers wore flares, Scotland voted yes, no and don't know, and music sounded like this.
The discotheque, a product of the electric age and a popular favourite with the children of the age. Tom Ferry.
Yes, I think that is true of discotheques today being very, very popular with the young people. One finds that
Old DJs never die, they just get nostalgic.
Today we go back to the 70s when the Bay City Rollers had conquered the world.
One of Scotland's sharpest observers of the devolution decade of the 70s now views Scotland from the 18th floor of Canary Wharf.
I think you really have to think of Britain at that period as being an almost entirely different country. Class politics were big news at the time. Huge scale layoffs, redundancies, industrial disputes, a much sharper left-right divide in mainstream politics. And of course in Scotland, 1970, the first major discovery of oil in what became the Forties field, and a frenetic, most unusual atmosphere. A lot of people in the main parties, the unionist parties, Labour and the Conservatives, becoming almost panic-stricken about the rise of Scottish nationalism throughout the decade.
Aye, things were certainly different in 79, with a pint of beer at 38 pence, a pack of fags at 50 pence for 20, and petrol was the princely sum of 22 pence per litre.
The A to Z of Devo speak, the letter L. L is for learner.
The story begins in the 1960s with the emergence of the SNP from the eccentric fringes into a party that could win members, votes and seats. From then on, everyone became a devolutionist.
There was a lot of dissent, growing dissent with the mainstream parties. In many ways, they were a very unhappy decade, the 70s, and the Conservative and Labour leaderships were most unpopular at different periods of time, and the SNP became a serious protest politics force at a time when, maybe for the first time, Scotland looked around, looked at the oil, and began to think maybe just one day we could go it alone.
We would propose to the Constitutional Committee the creation of an elected Scottish Assembly to sit in Scotland.
The discovery of oil in the North Sea was to see a push for Scottish independence, and the call for freedom from Westminster had begun.
Labour held out against devolution until Margaret MacDonald won the Labour heartland of Govan in 73. The effect was dramatic. In 1974 there were two general elections. In the first, Labour was anti-devolution, and in the second, it was pro.
If the Labour Party in Scotland do not accept some type of devolution, then these workers are going to turn from us and turn to the SNP. Turn to the SNP. Turn to the SNP.
But many Labour activists felt the party had been railroaded by the SNP bogeyman.
Let's not have the pantomime without the Demon King. The reason that this is taking place today is because at the last general election, the SNP won 7 seats, and because an awful lot of people are scared out their wits that at the next election they're going to win 13, 15, 19 seats.
In 74, the Labour government eventually endorsed the first devolution bill, but only after they had overturned a depleted Scottish exec decision for a 6-5 vote against. Depleted due to the fact that the other 18 were busy watching Scotland draw with Yugoslavia and exit from the World Cup.
What happened in the acrimonious, lengthy and savage debates in the House of Commons, which ground on through the late 70s, was that a hurdle was imposed into the referendum. The 40% rule, which stated that it had to be an absolute 40% plus of the voters eligible in Scotland saying yes to devolution, not a simple majority as in any other election before devolution was passed.
Completely unprecedented. A simple majority, good enough for a candidate in a by-election, or even a government in a general election, wasn't enough to give Scotland its own assembly.
Oh, what is circus? Oh, what is show?
C is for cock-ups, and the 40% rule caused many. For instance, the SNP MP George Reid and his wife were listed on the voters' roll at both their front door and the gate which led to their back garden. So they effectively voted yes at the front and no at the back. The A to Z of Devo speak, the letter F. F is for and the 40% rule. In Devo speak, the two often go together.
We're on the march, we always are. We're going to the Argentine.
By the late 70s, there was an uncanny resemblance between Scottish politics and Scottish football. We went to Argentina as proud lion rampants, but came back as drug-disgraced pussycats. There was an air of change and disillusionment, and as the sun went down on glam rock and the Bay City Rollers, we witnessed a new dawn, the rise of punk rock.
The campaign that followed was bizarre. The old system of Labour voting one way and Tories voting the other was thrown out the window. There were Tories who campaigned for and Labour supporters who campaigned for a no, totally against their party lines. And there were Liberals and Nationalists who voted no, again, completely against their party lines.
You have to remember all the time, of course, that this was a deeply unpopular government by this stage. This was the Callaghan government in a bitter winter, the winter of discontent, probably at the nadir of its popularity. So perhaps looking back, we have to ask ourselves also whether the failure to get a resounding yes in 1979 was also a verdict on the government.
Number one on the charts on that fateful day in March 1979 was...
While almost 31% of Scots voted no and almost 33% voted yes, devolution was dead in the water. The Labour government lost a vote of confidence in the House of Commons by a single vote, and Maggie Thatcher's Conservative Party won the general election which followed. Primary 1 was unimpressed, but then so was most of Scotland.
The A to Z of Devo speak, the letter W. W is for whinging, as in whinging jocks.
There was a lot of straightforward anti-Thatcher rancour and hostility throughout the decade that followed in the 80s, but it was a very, very negative period in many respects for Scottish politics when the whole Scottish political class, or at least a large section of it, non-Tory section, became sort of full-time dissidents. And perhaps actually the notion of the whining or whinging Scot, which most unfairly you hear now at Westminster, maybe that was when it was really implanted again in the English psyche.
This is me in London in '79, and here I am again. Hang on, your face is familiar. I've seen you somewhere before.
I've been with English too long.
Why is that?
Because I think we can manage fine ourselves.
Now, obviously, some things have changed since then. Has your opinion about the English changed?
Given I'm about to get married to one soon, that side has, but as regards devolution, I'm probably not quite as staunch as I used to be, but I'm still cautiously pro-devolution, yes.
So how has time changed your position on devolution?
I think it's two things. Firstly, the potential effect of effectively a surtax on people in Scotland and businesses. There's already been enough of a brain and people drain from Scotland, and you're concerned at the effect that would have. And secondly, I've got concerns about the quality of people that would be going into the Scottish Parliament. I suspect that people who work down here, for example, wouldn't be too keen to go back to what's effectively a sub-parliament.
I'm in the phone booth, it's the one across the hall. If you don't answer, I'll just bring it off the wall.
Gay chat, chat line, sex line, party line. I wonder what the party line is today.
Hello.
Hi, this is Stephen McGee. Who am I speaking to?
This is Katie McCullough from the Labour Party.
Hi. Given that our generation has an attention span that's challenged by the Teletubbies, can you tell me in about 30 seconds exactly what your position on devolution is?
I just think this is a really exciting time just now, because for all of my life so far we've had the Tories in power who've been wreaking havoc on this country and telling lies and just making a mess of things, and now we've got a chance to vote for a parliament where Scots can decide about the things that are important to them, like education and jobs and health. And I just think it's really exciting, and I'm looking forward to the last week of the campaign to get a big double yes vote so that we can move on to develop a new parliament for a new millennium.
And from Westminster to West Lothian.
The A to Z of Devo speak, the letter Q. Q is for question, as in the West Lothian question. While the constituency doesn't exist anymore, the question still does. And T is for Tam, as in DL. In '79, West Lothian was his seat, and his question.
Tam DL, MP for round here, was probably the most effective opponent of Labour's '79 devolution plans. General Tam, an ancestor 7 generations back, was believed by his enemies to be in league with the devil. The present Tam DL's opponents say pretty much the same thing.
And every highway it my way.
For those of us who weren't around in 1979,
You were 5, Stephen.
I was 5, absolutely. What similarities and differences do you see between the two campaigns?
Well, it's the similarities that are remarkable in the arguments. It's the same difficulty of trying to set up a subordinate parliament, in part, they're only parts, Stephen, of a unitary state, which above all you wish to keep united. This is the problem, and it's very like 79. Of course, there's also the difficulty that we're still expecting Scots MPs to go to London and vote on the most delicate matters in relation to England that we can't in relation to the electors who sent us to Parliament in the first place. Now, can that situation last? Can it endure? And that's the same as in 79. But I fear that what devolution really is in the form in which it's put forward is the beginning of a motorway without exit to a separate Scottish state. Now, Stephen, if you and your generation want that, that's fine. But that is different from what is being proposed. What is being proposed will inevitably, in my view, lead to a Scotland that is separate from England, just as certainly as a chrysalis turns into a butterfly.
The A to Z of Devo speak, the letter I. I is for independence, as in the slippery slope to...
Hi, this is Stephen McGee. Who am I speaking to?
It's Elaine Sweeney from the SNP.
Hi. As you know, our generation have notoriously short attention spans. So in 30 seconds, can you give me an idea of what your party's position on devolution is?
Well, the SNP believes that, well, Scotland needs a parliament. We all know that Scotland needs a parliament, and the SNP believes that this parliament should be independent, that it should be free to make all its own decisions and to have control over its income and its expenditure so that we can use our wealth to invest in the future. But obviously that's not what's going to happen with the Labour government. The proposals are devolution, and the SNP believes that any step towards any more power for Scotland is a good thing, so that's why we're supporting a Yes Yes campaign in the referendum.
The letter O. O is for oops, as in Labour 56 seats, Lib Dems 10 seats, SNP 6 seats, Tories seats.
Hello, Scott Dixon, the Scottish Conservative and Unionist Party.
Hi, this is Stephen McGee.
Given that our generation has the attention span of a gnat when it comes to politics, as an insect, give me 30 seconds worth of your position on devolution.
Well, I think the central thing that people should realise that the Scottish Conservative and Unionist Party is not anti-devolution. It was set up, it's the oldest party in Scotland, it was set up to protect Scotland's interests in the Union, not the other way around. So therefore we're not anti-devolution, but what we should do is have a look at the proposals that we have actually on the table. And when you have a look at those proposals, you have to see that what they really would do is create more constitutional mess, increase politicians and increase taxes. And we don't believe that anyone, whether it's a young person or anyone else in Scotland, would actually want that. And that's why we would be urging people to vote no.
Hi, this is Stephen McGee. Who am I speaking to?
Hello, this is Derek Young of the Scottish Liberal Democrats.
Hi. Given that our generation is notorious for having a short attention span, what is your position in devolution in 30 seconds?
Well, the Scottish Liberal Democrats have always been committed to home rule for Scotland and a better system of government for over 100 years as an issue of principle. It was a Liberal Prime Minister, Gladstone, who introduced the first bill in the House of Commons to give Scotland its own parliament. And it was only the First World War which stopped that coming into effect. So even in the 1950s and 60s, in the darkest days, when other parties really weren't interested, we were still fighting for the cause.
According to the A to Z of devolution, E is for evolution. Of course, the difference between devolution and evolution is that evolution happens faster. For 20 years now, Home Rulers have dreamed of a Scottish Parliament in this fine old school. But now politicians and the media are saying that the building is too small and too inflexible for a modern Scottish Parliament. Mary, you've been sitting in this cabin since 1995, and now they're not going to use the Royal High School up the road as the building for the Parliament anymore. How does that make you feel?
It's a little bit of a joke, I suppose, if you think about us having set it up here symbolically and it's not going to be used. But most of the people at the vigil feel that it doesn't really matter where the Parliament is as long as there is a Parliament.
Michael, you were born on the 1st of March 1979, the day of the referendum. What do you know about it? Is it important to you?
I know very little about it, but what I do know, it was an historical event, not so much as important as the present debate going on at the moment for this year's referendum. However, I do feel that a lot more people are more interested today than they were 18 years ago.
If more people are interested now, do you hope to vote? Do you intend to vote?
I intend to vote. I think it's extremely important to vote, and I will be voting no, I think, on the 11th of September.
Okay, so you're anti-devolution. Why?
I am, yeah. I think it'll be more of a talking shop than a working shop. It's also, I feel, a halfway house to independence, which I bitterly oppose.
So when we edit this all together, you're going to have constitutional law expert just there across your chest. So as a resident constitutional law expert, when it comes to actually electing members to the Scottish Assembly, how is that process going to work, and how will it be different from Westminster?
Well, that's one of probably the most fundamental points, actually, because it's going to make a big difference. What we're going to have is a marked departure from the system that we have at the moment. At the moment, we have first past the post system, so therefore the person who wins the most is elected. That is going to continue for 73 of the 129 members which are going to be in the Scottish Parliament. But on top of that, you're also going to have additional members, and that really is a form of proportional representation. So really what you're going to have is a mix of them both, which means that the end result is going to be a truer reflection of what the Scottish public actually voted for. So it's completely different to the traditional system that we have at the moment, where we elect people to House of Commons.
I say yeah, that's what I say, yeah.
For many Scottish young people, it will be the first time to vote at all. And I think what makes it more appealing is that, from my point of view, not being party political, but being so involved in this campaign is important. And I think that should be recognised by other young people. You know, it's not so much voting for a party this time as it was in the general election. It's voting for the future of people's lives. It's voting for their own country. It's voting for a parliament, and I think they should consider it a cultural change as well as a political change. And obviously getting young blood into the parliament will be important as well, getting the young people's perspective, you know, not old men in grey suits.
Obviously there's no 40% rule this time, but what kind of a mandate do you think you need to prove that the Scottish people want devolution?
We need a simple majority. We need those who are choosing their right to vote to come out and vote yes. It's a simple majority, and it couldn't be clearer than that. No hurdles this time.
The letter H. H is for Hun, a Scottish demotic for a supporter of Glasgow Rangers Football Club. Donald Findlay QC, a leading light in the No No campaign, is one of Scotland's leading Huns.
Down the road, the future is yours. And if the Assembly comes into being, then it's going to be something that will be with you for most of your adult life. A lot of us are established in careers, jobs, and so on, but if you're starting off, then I think you have to realise it's going to be against the background of a totally different political setup in Scotland. Now you have to ask yourself, is that something you want because you think it is good for the country? If so, how? And how are you going to pay for it? But I think if you believe that something is wrong as a matter of principle, then the politicians would be pragmatic. I'm not pragmatic. I think this is wrong in principle, and I believe that the people of this country should look at it as a matter of principle. And if at the end of the day they want to have the Assembly and they want to have tax-raising powers, then we will have to live with that, because that will be their decision. But I think you've got to look at this honestly and genuinely, not as a professional politician, and say, I believe this is wrong, here's why I believe it's wrong. If you share that view, support me. If you don't, vote the other way.
G is for G. I'm gagging for a G and T.
There seemed to be some confusion amongst adults in 79, but some youngsters were quite clear on how the vote should go. 3, in fact, and they were 10-month-old McNeil triplets from East Kilbride. According to the Daily Record, Michelle, Claire and Tracy hold the future of Scotland in their tiny hands.
I've been trying to work it out, but I can't. Who's who?
Michelle, Claire and Tracy. Mum and Dad for it, so the way we were brought up was to be for Scotland and doing up everything, so I would say it influenced quite a bit.
You pro-devolution now, or?
Yeah,
Yeah. How come? What is it about it that attracts you?
I just think it's the next step for Scotland, basically.
How are you all intending to vote on September the 11th?
I'm going for a no.
Going for no?
If I was here, I'd vote for no.
Maybe no, probably.
No.
Graham, back in 79.
Who would you like to be Scotland's Prime Minister?
Teddy Taylor.
You wanted Teddy Taylor to be the Scottish Prime Minister. Why?
I was young and stupid at the time.
Teddy Taylor.
I'll be voting yes. I think we deserve a chance to prove ourselves.
Yes, I think we need to prove it to ourselves that we can do it, and I think I think it is going to happen.
My dad.
I think my dad or my mum would probably make a better job of it than some of the Labour lot that are in Scotland at the moment. If you look at Paisley, etc., I wouldn't be too happy about the thought of people like that running an assembly in Scotland.
Would you like to be an assemblyman when you grow up?
No.
I think we should give it a try, see what happens. But the only thing that worries me, if it doesn't work, what would happen then? We're stuck with our assembly, it's not working. That's my only real worry about it.
I just don't think that Scotland's going to gain anything by having its own assembly. I think another tier of government's just going to cost more without actually achieving much more.
Once again, our destiny will be decided when we vote on Thursday. But are we?
The A to Z of Devil Speak. X is for... If you don't use yours on September the 11th, then you've got no right to whinge about the result.
Oh,